All right, this is a story about um, actually the most disruptive thing I ever did to another teacher's class. I taught for 34 years in junior high, middle school math, and anyways, ugh, I totally destroyed his science teacher's class. So I call it my donut story. So I'm walking down the hall, and I've got a Bismarck. It's chocolate covered and cream filled. Um, I haven't taken a bite yet. I guess they had donuts in the staff lounge, and I don't know where I got the donut from, but probably there. Anyways, my class was on the second floor, and I was walking down to the first floor to the science teacher to talk to him about the practice schedule that night or that afternoon for wrestling. We both co-coached the wrestling team at our school, and so I'm walking into his office, and from his office you can see into the room, and I take my first bite of the donut, and I'm gonna walk in, and all of a sudden, this, I don't know what you call it. It was like this inspiration, or just this command or thought popped in my head. Scrape some of the filling out and put it on the back of your neck. It's like it was just a strong idea, like just popped in my head, like it was like a command, do this. And I just paused, and I'm like, what? Why would I do that? And I stand there for like, I don't know, 10 seconds or so, deciding if I'm gonna obey this idea that popped in my head, and I do. I just scraped some of it out. I wiped it on the back of my neck. I set the donut down, and I walk into the room. This is ninth graders all taking some science test. And so there's like 28, 30 kids with their heads down taking a test. And he's got that long counter that he's standing behind. I'm in front of the class, and he's standing there grading tests from a previous class. And I walk in, and we're quietly talking about the practice schedule, and we do it in like 5-minute increments. So the first 5 minutes of this, second 5 minutes of this, and we're quietly talking about that. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, why have I wiped some filling from my Bismarck on the back of my neck? And I'm just, and like after a couple, I don't know, like after 3 or 4 minutes, all of a sudden this idea pops in my head of, holy smokes, what I could do with this. And I think about it for another minute. I'm really not even paying attention to our conversation. I'm just kind of like nodding, and he's writing stuff down, and I'm kind of nodding, and I'm kind of like formulating my plan to destroy his class. And I all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I am so excited now. I can't contain myself, and all of a sudden Mr. Hill, I've got the biggest zit on the back of my neck. It is like Mount Vesuvius. It's killing me. And he kind of looks at me like, most kids look up at me like, ugh, gross. And, like a third of them know me, so the other 2/3 don't know me, and they're thinking like, weirdo, who's this guy? And so I like, let it sink in. Like fishing, I set the hook and just loosen the drag and let the fish run. and their heads go back down, and they get back to taking their test. And, we're like, okay, take down this, double leg take down that, half Nelson that, and we're just talking the schedule. And I wait a few minutes to let it simmer. And all of a sudden I speak up nice and loud again. And I like, Mr. Hill, I can't stand it. This zit, I think it's ready to pop, and I got to do it. And so now it's acting time, and I pretend like I'm popping the world's biggest zit on the back of my neck, and I wipe off that filling that I'd put on the back of my neck, and it was a lot. There was a mound on my finger there. There's like 30 ninth grade kids that are totally convinced that I'm holding, where's the camera? That I'm holding pus from the world's biggest zit on the end of my finger here. And they start, they're like, oh, gross, get out of here. and some of the girls are doing the fanning thing. And in my head, I had this little panic meter where here is like calm, placid butterflies floating through the air and kids running around on the grass and just a beautiful day. And then over here was tornado, kids hanging onto a tree, hanging sideways, and cats and dogs flying through the air, and just total pandemonium. And I wanted to peg that meter to total chaos. And so right now it was just like here. It wasn't, anything very impressive. And they're yelling at me and, "Stop, you're gross, get out of there." So I go, "Wait a second." They, I put my hand up, they quiet down. I go, "This is science. I wonder what this stuff tastes like." And so now the panic meter is, like etching over, and the kids are like, "Kid, no, what's wrong?" But it's like watching a train wreck. They can't not watch me. And so now acting, I got on my acting hat, and I'm like, I'm pretending like I'm grossed out, and I'm trying to get the courage up to, taste this, and, leaning in, and I make contact, and, and I back up, and they're just like, "Oh, gross," and they're yelling at me, and I put my hand up, and they to their credit, they stop talking, and I go, "That's not bad." And it was like slow motion, whoa, and I licked my finger. I sucked the filling off the end of my finger, and they lose their minds because they are totally convinced that that's pus from the biggest zit on the end of my finger. They lose their minds. I mean, first thing that comes at me is everything, whatever's on their desk, they start throwing at me. So their wadded up tests start coming, pencils, pens, science textbook, the big beefy, like 400-page ones that weigh like 10 pounds. I catch one, and now this is my shield, and I'm deflecting, I'm defending myself, and stuff's just bouncing off me. I'm just crying, I'm laughing so hard, and they're just like yelling, just going hysterical, yelling at me, and I'm defending myself, and then, their backpacks, some kids, they're throwing their backpack lunches. It was right before lunch. Some kids are taking their shoes off and throwing their shoes at me. It was awesome. And finally they run out of ammunition, and they're just spent. And I put the textbook down that I'd caught, and I walk over back to, walk to the side of the room into his office and come back in with my donut with a bite out of it. And I turn and show him the back of my neck. I go, "This was filling from my donut. I don't have a zit in the back of my neck." And then I just take I just jam that donut into my mouth. So I got chocolate up my nose. I got filling that goes in my ear. The filling just squirted sideways and hit the wall behind me. And I took the biggest bite, the most violent, biggest bite of that donut. And it just all over the place. And I clear my mouth, and I go, "Good luck on that test, you guys." And Mr. Hill, and he's just standing there, he's so disgusted with me. I go, "Hey, you have a great day." And I walk out, and he was so mad. That day, after school at practice, he couldn't even talk to me. And then the next day, I was like, "How'd your kids do on the test?" He goes, "They still couldn't take it. They're still traumatized." And so 5 of his classes took the test on, say, Wednesday. Now it's Thursday, and, he's moving on to the next chapter. This one class has to take the test, and Friday, did they take the test? No, they're still traumatized. And Monday, did they take the test? Yeah, they finally took the test on Monday. Oh no, they couldn't take it on Monday because it was over the weekend. So Tuesday, they finally took the test on Tuesday. And so it just messed them up for that whole quarter, because, they were 3 or 4 days behind the other classes, and, having to set up labs and stuff. I mean, he just was not happy with me, but yeah, it was total pandemonium. One of the worst things I ever did to another class, but it was sure funny.